This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Hey, what's up, and welcome to QnA, the show where I take your questions from YouTube and Twitter, answer them here in video format. A ton of questions to get into, especially after the Browns' victory versus the Baltimore Ravens. Some questions looking back at that game, some questions looking forward into next week's game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, as we know that's going to be a big one for this Browns team as well. First comment comes from Eric Spicer, who says, last 3 full games Deshaun Watson has played, 66 of 97, 721 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a 5-1 record is not just one half of good football anymore. You know, I shouldn't be surprised anymore by how things get handled. And it's awkward because I have to make sure, or at least make an effort, that things that I cover every day, when they are talked about by national people who don't talk about the team every day, I feel like I do have a bit of a duty as somebody who represents this fan base and this team, not this team literally, but, you know, represents the general broad sense of what it is of Cleveland Browns, the community of Cleveland Browns. I feel a sense to always make sure that the Browns get a fair representation from people nationally, or people that I even work with nationally, right? And it's been odd to see people that I genuinely had respect for, thought that they had the same level of respect for the game, and, you know, just what it means to make sure that you stay fair and objective through some circumstances that might make it difficult, just completely abandon it to cover things in the most disingenuous ways possible. And the response to this victory, the response to Browns fans being excited over this victory from people basically telling a lot of Browns fans that they should not be excited because, yeah, he played good in the second half, but boy, he wasn't that good in the first half, is absolutely blowing my mind how idiotic people can choose to be, especially when they know better. Because if you're going to write off a fourth quarter comeback because the first and second quarter weren't great, that is literally doing sports talk wrong. Like, I just can't describe it more than that. We have never given what happens in the first half of a football game the same weight as what happens in the fourth quarter of a football game. Anybody who says that is purposely a fraud. Like, they're purposely being frauds at that point, because we know that the fourth quarter is what decides the game, especially in a close football game. It's what decides the game. And honestly, you're judged on the football field at what you do at the game's most pivotal moments. That's why sometimes you just can't look at the stats, right? I always have this saying, you can't read football. You have to watch football. A lot of why I say that is because you have to understand the situation in which plays arose. One of my biggest criticisms of Deshaun Watson's 2020 season was, yes, he put up those big numbers, but in the game's most important drives, he really didn't show up as much as you would wanted him to, like he did in 2019. The stats, the cumulative numbers, the arbitrary things like getting 3 touchdowns, 300 yards, that stuff is so much less important than showing up in the moments that it matters to win the game. And the amount of people willing to ignore the fact that the Browns went down 31-17 in the fourth quarter, and Deshaun Watson and this offense went down the field in 2 minutes and responded for a quick score that completely turned this game back around in the Cleveland Browns' favor. The amount of people willing to ignore that, it's it's honestly sad to see, because I thought that some people had a bit more integrity than that. And to see people like Brett Coleman, who have a good reputation, who have put out good work, willing to just bend over backwards to try to make whatever Deshaun Watson does seem bad when he doesn't even really have to talk about it. It's just, it's shocking to me how much this has broken people's brains. It's shocking to me. Like, look, the Browns have never got favorable treatment by the national media. We all know that that's never been the case. But it's just, it's shocking to me how many Browns fans are willing to pump their ears full of negative bullshit after one of the biggest wins in franchise history. And it's even more it's less shocking to me how many national people are willing to do it. But the fact that some Browns fans are going along with it and legitimately trying to poo-poo a 6-3 record in a road comeback win versus the Baltimore Ravens, who are playing some of the best football in the NFL prior to this game. I mean, you're just never going to be happy with this team. And if that's the case, you should probably just stop watching and rooting for the team. It really doesn't make sense. But yeah, just the whole environment around it. Like, I knew it would be awkward when the day came that Deshaun Watson did something that people would have to acknowledge and say, hey, that was good. I don't like him as a person, but that was good, right? That's basically the ethos of what everybody's trying to get out. But nobody's able to just come out and say that or put it out plainly how they feel. Instead, they got to play these games and they can't get themselves to say he played well. They got to like do these mental gymnastics to lie to themselves, say he played bad, or to convince themselves it was a bad game when, I mean, we know what's up, man. If Josh Allen did that in the fourth quarter, we would be hearing nothing about it. If Joe Burrow did that in the fourth quarter, then we would be hearing nothing about it. You know, if Trevor Lawrence did that in the fourth quarter, we would hear nothing about that first half. Hell, Trevor Lawrence got Pat Mahomes level hype this offseason because of a comeback that he had in the second half of a football game, despite the fact that in that same football game, he had 3+ turnovers. But people are so focused on that first half for Deshaun Watson, and they're making it out to be much worse than it actually was. It wasn't good, but like it wasn't like he threw 4 interceptions in the first half. It's just what it is, man. And I hope people understand that even if you have a anti-Deshaun Watson agenda, you don't like Deshaun Watson, and look, I don't care if you like him or not. But if you have a anti-Deshaun Watson agenda, I need you to understand that being uncharitable and reaching in moments like this do nothing for that agenda, but hurt it. And so many people are just willingly making themselves look like idiots the last couple of days for no reason. Like you don't have to like somebody or have the most positive opinion of somebody off the field to acknowledge that they had a good football game. Like, those things aren't mutually exclusive. Every football player that has a good game is not the greatest person. Or you don't like every football player that has a good game. Like, you can acknowledge one without giving him the other. But we act like that's impossible, and people are just bending over backwards to say some of the most laughable stuff possible, and it's people who are smart. Basically, I saw Brett Coleman put out a tweet basically criticizing the Browns for adjusting to what the Ravens were doing and successfully doing so. This is where we're at. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and it's just a lot of people are going to end up looking bad if he continues to play well. So yeah, I'm just shocked that people are willing to go this far with it. Like, it's really ridiculous. Mr. Hardy says, could this be the win that makes everybody in the franchise confident with DW4, or have they been confident and fan base noise just makes it seem like they aren't? I feel like they've been confident. I don't think you give them that kind of money in trade for him if you weren't confident in the first place. And I think the people in that locker room have been confident of him. Everybody else has had the questions on the outside, but you know, that makes sense. We hadn't seen it a month ago like we've seen it now consistently. So, you know, I think a lot more people gonna buy in who aren't on in the team. And I think the team, if they weren't bought in now, they're 100% bought in. Oliver Kane says, how improved did you find more in his play making presence? I know the stats had nothing to do had nothing to be hyped about, but I like seeing him get targets on crucial throws, even when crowned with the touchdown. What was different according to you? I don't know if anything was different with Moore. I just think that they did a better job finding him, and I think the pockets held up better, that you had opportunities to go to him down the field. And I would look for this game against Pittsburgh to be one where they look at Elijah Moore more often than we're thinking. John Hatton says, how do we clean up the turnovers? Or maybe it was just great defense this week. Yeah, I think the Kyle Hamilton play, like, I don't know what you could really do about that. They just had a great play, great jump on that ball. The fumble in the pocket, you hit blindside hit, that happens. Like, the good thing about this game and the last two games is that I didn't see any turnovers that looked super avoidable. And that's been the stuff that's been killing the Browns, right? Every once in a while, you're going to have a turnover, but you got to avoid the obvious ones, the super avoidable ones. And they have been avoiding that the last 2 weeks. Hopefully that's a trend that continues. Jose Ramirez's chain says, despite Watson being perfect in the second half, do you have anything to be concerned about from the first half, or does the second half completely negate that for you? I think we're so used to having his play be under a microscope that we don't remember in a way how we usually evaluate games from quarterbacks. And we don't usually do it quarter by quarter. We don't give interim report cards for quarterbacks in football games. We judge a quarterback based on what they did in the entire game. We judge a quarterback on what they did in the most important moments of the game. And yes, he did not have a good first half, but that doesn't really matter in the grand picture of it, because when this game needed him to do something consistently, whether it was in the first half or second half, whether it was with his legs or with his arms, go back to all the moments where the Browns needed to keep a drive going in order to stay in the game and get points. Deshaun Watson made plays to keep the drive going, stay in the game, and make points. Whatever the stats look like, it's kind of irrelevant, in my opinion, because he came through every time you needed him to come through. He didn't come through as much as you wanted to in the first half. He didn't have a bunch of touchdowns. That would have been great. Obviously, there's room to be better. There's always going to be that. But that's what you judge a quarterback on. When you needed that quarterback to step up, when you needed him to be a franchise level quarterback, did he rise to the occasion, or did he fold in that moment under that pressure? He rose to the occasion. That's what you want to see out of a quarterback. We got to get out this mindset. And I'm not saying this is what you were doing, Jose, but we got to get out this mindset of dissecting these games so much that we're like, well, the first half was good, but the second half wasn't. It's like, it's not about the game. It's not about the arbitrary halves and what the stats look like at halftime. It is about what happened in the game, what were the most important moments of the game, and how did he respond and step up and carry and lead this team in those moments that matters. But, you know, I think there's so much diluted bullshit from just national and even some local people who are so hell-bent on being uncharitable about anything that Ford does at this point, that it's really just diluted the conversation about him to the point to where it's almost impossible to have a fair one, even though, like, again, man, we're doing all of this about what he had one bad game against Pittsburgh this year. Like, that's really what this all stems from, is one bad game and an injury that he definitely had. All of this, like, think about how ridiculous that is when we're going to step back and do the 7,000-foot view at the end of the season. We had all of this negativity about him, and everybody was in it. I was in it, over one game and an injury. Like, he played bad in the game and got injured. And we were like, man, this is the worst quarterback trade of all time. He played bad in one game and got injured. And that's how people responded to it. Like, it's gotten so ridiculous, man. It really has. And I just hope that people get a grip at some point, right? So we can actually just talk about the football, man. Garrett Smith says, watching an amazing comeback win. What was your favorite part of the game? My favorite moment of the game was, hey, look, when the Ravens went up 31-17 and you need to get a quick score, how this offense responded to get that quick score, and then Greg Newsome getting that pick six. Those two, that sequence right there, that just made you feel like, man, this is a team that really could go far if things just break the right way for them. That's the kind of stuff. Super Facts says, remind me, did a man really say Stefanski's offense can't win in competitive games, or am I just misremembering that? Yes, somebody told me to mark my words that the Browns are going to blow this game to the Ravens, and that Stefanski's offense can't win competitive games, despite the fact that Kevin Stefanski has already won competitive games this year, the year before, and the year before. Stefanski's another one people get weird about too. Like, can we just acknowledge he's 10 games over 500 as a head coach for the Cleveland Browns. He's won Coach of the Year. He's taken his team to the second round. The 1 year he had decent quarterback play. He gets decent quarterback play now, and the team's 6-3. Can we acknowledge that Kevin Stefanski might be good at his job? It seems like everybody else has acknowledged that, but some Browns fans. Kevin's good. Kevin's pretty good. Russell says, is there any team you think we may not match up with? Well, to me, it's Miami because of their speed and Tua's ability to get the ball out fast. Other than that, I like our chances with everyone else. Yeah, I would add Kansas City to that list because Pat Mahomes versus man coverage, he can break that so easily because he's just so slippery and he has great arm strength. So if I'm not trying to play two people, I would like to not have to play the Chiefs, not have to play Miami for the reasons you mentioned. UK Browns fans says, how many wins do you think a realistic expectation for this team to have by the end of the year? And how many wins do you think would be a minimum to make the playoffs in the AFC? I think 9 wins usually gets one team in. But 10 pretty much makes sure that you're going to get in, especially with 7 seeds. So I would say that's the magic number. If you're the Cleveland Browns, is you want to get to at least 10. Once you get to 10 and if you can start stacking above that, then you're talking about division championship. And then once you get to I think 12 probably gets you a division championship. If you get to 13 wins, 14 wins, and now we're talking crazy numbers, I don't even think you can get to 14, to be honest with you, unless you win out. But then you get to 13 wins, you're talking about getting a 1 seed. But yeah, those are my win numbers, win targets for this team. Is hey, if you want to get this is what you need to get. Dylan Blackham, who says, how did you feel about the defense? They struggled early, made some huge plays to keep us in it. Do you think we'll continue to have bad starts, or is it just the fact that we played one? Hey, look, man, Lamar Jackson's a true MVP candidate, and he does things to defenses that not many teams can. And I think, that was it. Is this the Watson is back game, or are we not there yet? I don't know if we're truly there yet, but I think we're within the range of this. Here's what I'll say. One, when we say Watson is back, I really want us as fans to clarify what we mean, because what I hope it doesn't mean is that we expect that he's going to throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns every week. What I do think we are in is that we are in the regular range of Deshaun Watson games. He will have some good games. He will have some bad games. He will have some excellent football games. But hopefully we're done with the, Pittsburgh level or Houston game level bad. Now, I do think watch out for that Christmas Eve Houston game. That could be a stinker. I'm worried about that one being a stinker because he does seem to be bothered by that whole dynamic, right? In Houston. And I think that it's almost impossible to ignore when you're playing in there. So watch out for that dynamic that week, but I do think that he is in the regular range of Deshaun Watson. I think you're going to get some good games. I think you're going to get some bad, maybe a badder game or two, but I would hope that it's going to be more consistent, high-level quarterback play. But yeah, I think we're at a good place with DeShaun. We'll see how he comes out health wise this week. If he's nice and healthy for this Pittsburgh game and he gets through that game healthy, I talked about it being like a 3-week cushion with him coming back, kind of being patient with him, letting the process play its way out. And if you can get out of that process 3-0, and he's healthy versus Denver, then I think we're going to start to see some of the, in structure, Deshaun Watson, out of structure stuff that we're really used to, and the highlights are going to start piling up at that point. But yeah, that's what I think. Thank you for the question, Tyler. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Pete.